feel like I'm talking weird. God damn it. Oh well.
Great. I'm ready.
Homebound Arc. Circe's hideous red eyes softly wandered around the page of the book in her hands. Her feet were stretched out before her, firmly up on the desk, nearly threatening to knock the computer off. The screen faintly illuminated her face, but left the rest of the room utterly dark as my hands clacked at the keyboard. My lids were heavy, drifting closed every time I let my mind wander for more than a second. I groggily glanced at the computer, seeing the small white numbers reading well past 4 in the morning. I had tried everything I could possibly think of. The faint ding and red flash of a mistyped passphrase became almost background noise as my fingers began to blister more and more by the hour. Circe yawned beside me, arms stretching behind her as she squirmed in her chair, dropping her book to the floor indifferently. She smacked her lips, breathing softly before grabbing another book from the stack beside her. 10 minutes, I mumbled softly, almost a minute slower than the last one.
Shit.
She grumbled, pink eyes narrowing on the book in front of her.
That's not good. That book was barely 300 pages. I'm slowing down.
What was that one about? I mumbled more to myself than anything as I typed into the computer. Any good?
6 out of 10.
She shrugged.
Not much of a murder mystery, but I guess I like the author's style. I still wish you had less fiction books. What do you gather from useless fantasies?
I don't know. I slumped, breathing out softly as the computer dinged angrily at me.
Rhetorical question.
Circe mumbled, thumbing through her new book, eyes scanning at an unreal speed as she turned the pages nearly constantly. Maybe bring your own books, then. I mumbled to the screen, not even flinching as a book smacked into my head before clattering to the floor. Circe mumbled incoherently to herself, picking up another book and thumbing through it even faster. This had been our interaction for what seemed like forever, time blurring together as we occasionally made offhanded comments to each other, otherwise involved in our own tasks. Every time I nodded off the slightest bit, I would be awakened by a kick from Circe's dress heels. She assured me that she, herself, never slept, and although she knew the detrimental effect it had on her health, she couldn't be bothered to waste so much time doing something like that. After some probing, I finally got her to admit that she ended up getting about 4 hours of sleep every other night. I was determined to get her to admit to more, but instead came to realize that she was probably telling the truth about that. At one point, I found myself simply typing random numbers onto the screen, fading in and out so often that I couldn't even remember what I'd been trying to type. After some time of this, Circe finally gave a big stretch, dropping her latest book before swinging her feet off the desk.
10-minute break.
She sighed, again throwing a book at me as I didn't respond immediately. I looked up at her, blinking heavily several times before finally leaning back from the computer and stammering out, okay.
Enjoy it while you can.
She nodded, as if she had just bestowed some glorious gift on me.
I myself will be eating something. Call if you need me.
With that, she walked out of the room. I sat utterly still for several seconds, my vision dark and blurry after finally looking away from the screen. My fuzzy mind didn't even realize where Circe had gone until I suddenly heard the distant sound of my refrigerator opening. I instantly bolted upright, scrambling down the stairs, arriving in the kitchen moments later. Hey, I cried, aghast at her actions. Just wait a minute. What the heck do you think? I stopped cold, my limbs splaying out in horror at the sight I saw. Cersei sat casually on top of my counter, completely ignoring the chairs as her legs swung absent-mindedly under her. Her pale limbs cradled a torn open tray of uncooked hamburger meat, her head turning in curiosity to greet me, fingers popping another small ball of the blood-red substance into her mouth. She blinked softly, cocking her head to one side before swallowing and narrowing her eyes.
What?
She questioned.
Never mind that. Where do you keep your glasses for water?
I stared soundlessly. You... I gagged. Cersei, that's raw meat. You need to cook that. Her eyes glanced down at the plate in her hand, before looking back to me as if I was spouting nonsense.
I said the break was 10 minutes, did I not?
She cocked her head.
My immune system is pretty awesome. I don't have time to figure out your stove. This is fine.
No, it's not! I retorted in horror. There are plenty of other things to eat anyway.
I need protein.
She waved me away, popping some more into her mouth despite my frantic protests.
I won't eat it all anyway. Mind your own business.
My eye twitched, fist balling. Fine, I sighed after some time. You do you, but that's weird as hell.
Glasses?
She reiterated, ignoring my last quip and swinging herself off the counter, dusting off her bloody lab coat. You gonna eat the water raw too? I grumbled to myself, shuffling over and opening a cabinet reluctantly.
Your usefulness to me ends when you crack the passphrase.
Cersei shrugged.
I'll eat you raw.
Her delivery of the joke was so deadpan and straightforward that I actually felt my heart clench as I turned around to see her vile eyes locked on me. She walked forward casually, dress shoes clacking before she finally let up, reaching past me to grab a glass as she smirked and broke her maniacal grin. I returned her smirk nervously, but as she turned around and began filling up her glass, I couldn't help but feel my heart drop. Listen, Cersei, I stammered. I know you don't want to hear this, but, I mean, it's been 10 continuous hours and we're not anywhere close. Maybe...
We keep trying,
she replied nonchalantly, facing away from me.
I will not abandon this plan until we are forced to take direct action against 12.
I left my mouth open after she cut me off, just now closing it as my eyes dropped to the floor.
If we are forced to directly confront 12,
she continued softly, slowly setting down her glass.
People will die. This is a fact, Jonathan. 12 was the first of her kind. A hyper-intelligent parasite found paired with an unstable host, and trained in more than just obedience. 12 can operate weapons, assault rifles, and certain military-grade missile launchers. She can defuse explosives, nearly all variations of hand grenades, and her projectile capacity is well beyond what we thought possible. Inducing scatter protocol is nearly impossible, and she is horrifically cruel in her usage of the 4 chain tendrils she possesses. Those before me created something we cannot govern, and somehow expected us to never lose control. 12's only rival is successor member of the Daughter Program, an 8-year-old girl known as 104. If this plan fails, our only option is to use 104 to stop 12, and then we run the risk of losing control of 104 as well. Dr. Cleo Dahmer was the only one who seemed capable of controlling the daughters, and she never revealed her secrets before her death, not even to me. So we will keep trying, until 12 comes into contact with humans and leaves us no other option but to stop her by any means necessary. We will not leave this house, and you will keep typing until you can't type anymore, and then you'll keep typing. Is that clear?
I said nothing, just tried to digest everything she had just said. What are they? I spoke slowly, trying to catch her eyes as her gaze wandered. These subjects. You keep referring to them as her and it synonymously. Are they, like, machines or what? Why are you just assuming 12 is going to kill people if she comes into contact with them? Even if she was designed to do that, what's to say that—
Your classmates in 8th grade were killed by 12.
Cersei cut me off, taking a big swig of the water indifferently. I choked, horror splitting my eyes wide.
Back to work.
Cersei sighed, downing her glass of water and shoving the rest of the raw meat into her mouth.
But, as a short answer to your question, the subjects are dead humans being controlled by parasitic creatures called left hands. They live to prey off living humans, and are natural predators. Does this make sense? Subject 12 was one such parasite in your class, and she acted before our team was able to stop her. She has now been militarized, but she was, and always will be, a psychopathic murderer, with the power to dismember those around her, with nothing but a thought.
What? I gagged, my pale skin draining of warmth as my hands began to shake. 12 was the murderer?
You're not the only one to have lost family to the parasites.
Cersei nodded softly.
Your case isn't even exceptionally rare. Countless massacres have begun to spring up, with more and more parasites being discovered every year.
Just wait a fucking minute! I cried, far too horrified to deal with her calm demeanor. My class was killed by a gunman. You can't just
You asked why I was certain we cannot trust 12 among humans.
Cersei snapped back, eyes narrowing.
I am doing nothing but telling you the truth. It is their nature. Do you or do you not understand this?
Still shaking, I slowly let my eyes drop to the floor, breathing heavily. Tears brimmed in my stinging eyes as I tried to wrap my head around this. I finally looked up at Cersei in disbelief, mouth moving soundlessly for several seconds before I finally choked out. This is kinda sudden.
Many of those close to me just died.
Cersei spoke.
Losing lives among parasites is the precise reason we are in this business. The explosion killed nearly every member of the Revnok facility. I worked with them all my life. I am not afflicted by grief after this, nor am I letting it affect my performance. I do please ask that you do not dwell on your own grief for too long.
I went to speak, but just slowly let my mouth close again, sighing heavily. Sure, I nodded. I understand. Her eyes flashed back to me, something indiscernible arcing through them as she studied me closer.
Very interesting,
she spoke softly. I held my breath, unsure of how to react to that. So, back to work? I finally coughed out, wilting under her stare. I'm ready when you are.
Great.
She grinned, dark ringed eyes suddenly softening as she tilted her head and gave a cheesy thumbs up.
I'm ready.
I met her tired eyes, remaining silent for several seconds before letting myself relax and feeling a light grin make its way across my face. Let's go. Kill a left hand, I nodded. Save humanity or whatever. I'm with you. I curled my fingers together and softly fist bumped her hand, which was still in the shape of a thumbs up. Her eyes widened, glancing down at her hands in sheer disbelief. Slowly, her face brightened in the widest smile I had yet seen, some genuine warmth filling her ghastly face, as she nodded in return. Facility, Ark. My eyes slowly opened, the room blotting into view like fuzzy ink drops as my vision pulsed. Suddenly, blinding white was forced in front of my face, burning into my corneas and causing me to flinch backwards on whatever bed I seemed to be lying on. My eyes slowly focused on the chart that was being held in front of me, white paper entirely empty aside from a single word. The handwriting was scribbled and nearly illegible. Hello. I blinked slowly, glancing down at my hands to see them free of blood. I looked back up to see an unreasonably tall girl holding the chart, her steely gray eyes blotted with speckles of turquoise as if paint had carelessly spilled across them. She seemed fully aware of how unnaturally tall she was, her form sheepishly hunched over as her embarrassed hands clawed like a T-Rex in front of her. She brought the chart against her chest, her eyes glancing between the letters and me as if to make sure I was reading it. I sat up groggily, checking myself for injuries instantly. I seemed fine, as if nothing had ever happened, and yet I swore I could still taste the boiling copper of my own blood in the back of my throat. My eyes blinked again, gaze darting around. I was in a horribly bright medical room, much like the one I had first woken up in, but far larger, 8 or 9 other beds spaced out along the floor. They were all separated loosely by pale blue curtains, many of which were speckled with long since dried blood. Most of the beds looked vacant, as if they hadn't had occupants in a long time. The girl again sheepishly pressed the clipboard forwards, and I curiously scanned her up and down before stammering out, Hey. She nodded, grinning widely. And that's when I noticed the halo above her head, sloshing like oil suspended in water. It was made of blood. The substance hovered unsteadily, swirling slowly around an invisible center point. It seemed to follow her head as she moved around. She turned the chart back to herself, mouth pursing in concentration as she scribbled hastily. She turned the board back around, short black hair flipping as it jutted out in almost comically messy spikes. How do you feel? The chart read. I laughed awkwardly, pulling the covers from myself and swinging my legs off the bed. I feel fine. I grinned, nodding at her. Much better now, thanks. She smiled back, deep, dark eyes almost childlike, blood halo twitching like an out-of-focus signal. I looked at the number on her uniform as I jumped down from the bed. 748, I spoke slowly. You're 7th class, like me. She nodded her head, quickly scribbling on the paper before flipping it around and smiling. I am broken, it read. Like you. Tell me about it, I sighed, forcing a grin. I looked down at my hands, turning them slowly. What the hell had happened to me? Scribbling. I turned back to the girl to see her writing something, several seconds passing before she finally turned it towards me. This is the 7th ward, the paper read, followed by a smiley face. I have lived here for as long as I can remember, which constitutes several weeks. I do hope they fix you, 76, but until then, it is good to have a companion. My name is John, I nodded slowly, returning her smile. Nice to meet you. Would you mind if I asked your name, or is that universally taboo? She didn't even turn the paper around, just slid her arm around the side awkwardly and scribbled out 3 words. I blinked deliberately, watching her eyes just swirl with genuine warmth as her smile lit up her face. The paper read, "I am God." My head tilted slightly, trying to see if I was simply reading it wrong. She just continued looking at me as if she had just proclaimed the most innocent thing in the world. She turned the clipboard around after I just stared at it, scribbling some more. "I like you, John," it read, followed by another smiley face. "Maybe we can be friends. If referring to me as your creator makes you uncomfortable, you can call me Mari." Yeah, I stammered, shaking this off. Sure, Mari, I'd like that." My eyes flicked around the space again, slowly dropping to the tiled floor as I softly continued. "But I'm sorry, I don't think I'll be around for very long." I looked back to Mari to see her head cock slightly, eyes never so much as blinking as she looked at me questioningly. I've got a chance tomorrow," I sighed, the idea almost laughable now the more I thought about it, the very concept forcing a chuckle from me. "Against the 5th class. I'm willing to bet I'm more broken than you, Mari. I don't even remember how I got here to the 7th ward. I just started melting." My eyes wandered away, catching what appeared to be her bed, just one down from mine, her ruffled covers and mine the only signs of life in the room. Soon, it would be just her again. "I'm sorry," I breathed softly, sitting back down on my bed, looking away. It was some time before I felt a hand tap my shoulder, my eyes glancing to look at the clipboard Mari was presenting me. "I believe in you." Her hand curled around the pad again, drawing a smiling cat face, her own smile growing as her caring eyes searched me. I let out a slight chuckle, looking back to the ground. "Thanks," I breathed. "But you're wrong in that, Mari." Silence followed for a great deal of time, continuing even after Mari slowly sat beside me, her stick-like legs reaching all the way to the ground. "So," I finally spoke out, "if you don't mind my asking, is your defect that you're unable to heal yourself? Can you not talk because your vocal cords are damaged somehow?" I looked to see her hand hurriedly carve at the paper, tilting it towards me after nearly a minute. "I suppose my defect," it read, "is that I do not know how the human body works. Many of the organ systems are largely a mystery to me. I have long since forgotten how to construct them. They are very complex, humans are. You mentioned a feeling of melting. I do not know this, but I know the feeling of death very well. I do often wonder if I am alive, for this is all I feel." She tilted the paper back to herself, quickly adding, "I do not know how vocal cords work, and therefore cannot build them for myself. This is why I cannot speak like you." She tapped her pen, again hurriedly adding, "I have made many mistakes with my body, but my vocal cords and lungs are the most easily recognized as malformed." She waited for my eyes to glance to her before smiling and pointing up to the halo above her head. She put her hand back to the paper and wrote, "This is how I oxygenate blood. Complex folded membranes like those found in lungs are difficult to construct without a reference." Are you trying to tell me you built your body from scratch?" I retorted, disbelieving. What? What are you?" She tilted her head curiously, before flipping back in her clipboard to previous pages, again pointing to the 3 words. I am God. I shook my head, running my hands through my hair. Clearly something was wrong with her brain as well. Alright, I sighed. If you say so. I paused before breathing deeply, feeling my lungs expand and contract. My eyes fell to the floor before glancing to a clock on the wall. It was mere hours until the chance. I had lost a lot of time.